So now that the Super Bowl is done, thought it was time to come on here and give you an updated mock draft. And congrats to the Eagles. As much as the focus in recent years has been on the Chiefs, you then take a look and you say, wait a second. Since 2017, the Eagles have played in 3 Super Bowls, and they've won 2 of them with 2 different starting quarterbacks, 2 different head coaches. Kind of crazy when you think about it, right? Kind of an unprecedented run of Philadelphia Eagles success, unless you want to go back to the Steve Van Buren days of the 40s. But congrats to them, and for the Chiefs, you were this close to history until the Super Bowl started, and then you just got mollywopped, and I guess sometimes that happens. The better team won, right? But now that the regular season is over, the playoffs are over, the Super Bowl's in the books, and we've got a few weeks until free agency starts, a couple of weeks until the combine kicks off. Now we can sit there and kind of assess where we're at and see what the landscape looks like in terms of the NFL draft. For this version, I went ahead and went all the way through the 3rd round up to the Bears pick in that round, which is pick 72. So you're going to see 2+ rounds worth of selections in the description box below. As a reminder, and especially as we get into this month and I start scouting some of these prospects, I'm sure my stance on some of these guys is going to change. I'm sure players are going to change their positions on this mock draft, so just anticipate that it is going to come. I think similar themes as before, where we talk about like this is a really good draft in the trenches. I certainly look at offensive tackle, especially in round 1. It feels like it's a really good class. The guard talent is really good, at least days 1 and 2. Not very big on the center class particularly, but the defensive line, edge rushers, like some really, really good talent there, which introduces this kind of weird thing of like you'll see some positional runs in the first 3 rounds of this draft. At some point you're going to see a run on offensive tackles. You're going to see a run on guards probably in round 2, right? And then you're going to see a big run on defensive linemen and edge rushers, and probably see one of those in round 1, another one of those in round 2, which means that some guys at other positions that might even grade out a little higher in theory are going to drop. Overall assessment of this draft continues to be like there may be some pretty good notable talent at the top, but this doesn't feel like a great class. I don't know how many of these guys are going to have a first-round grade for me. I certainly think right now, if you put the over-under on 16 of them having a first-round grade for me, I would certainly take the under and buy a good bit. I'd be floored if I had more than 12 or 13. I'm just being honest with you at this point. But then I could also say, I don't know that my 12 or 13 first-round grades are going to line up with a lot of other people's, and that's just the way it is. That's part of the fun here. It doesn't feel like a great draft class, and I think that's a reflection a lot of times of the lack of like truly special quarterback talent. And now we transition to the picks. Tennessee, what are they going to do at number 1? Last time they had the number 1 overall pick, if I recall correctly, that's when they traded down with the Rams, and they got back into position. They took Jack Conklin, But the difference is, back then, they had already taken Marcus Mariota number 2 overall in 2015. They don't have that here. You're going to say, well, they've got Will Levis. Okay, what about it? They had Will Levis, and they kept yanking the rug out from under him to put in Mason Rudolph. They still ended up with the top pick. So they've got to go quarterback here. If there's any doubt at all, you have to go quarterback here. And then it comes down to, do you want Cameron Ward or do you want Shedeur Sanders? And I don't know, I keep thinking like Cameron Ward has more upside, so Tennessee goes there, and then the Giants end up with Shedeur Sanders, and the big media market feels like the right fit on both accounts to me. You're going to say, what about Cleveland? And I'm going to say, well, even before the Myles Garrett trade request, I wasn't sold that this team was going to be going quarterback at number 2, even with Deshaun Watson possibly being out for 2025 and with all the cap money tied into him. They might bring in somebody like a Sam Darnold. They might, sit there and bring in somebody like a Kirk Cousins. I have a feeling they go more the veteran route here. Could be totally ass wrong, mind you, but I feel like they could kick that long-term quarterback consideration down the road. But in this case, in this mock, I've got them taking Jalen Milroe from Alabama at the top of round 2. So maybe that feels more appropriate, and Cleveland looks at the board and says, hey, we're going to take somebody that we feel is a superior talent to any of the quarterbacks on the board at this point, and that's going to be Abdul, the edge from Penn State. Which puts New England in an interesting spot. Like, they have to come into this draft and understand, even with Mike Vrabel being the head coach, like, defense is not how you're going to win. You have to build around your young quarterback. And as great as it would be for the Patriots to say, hey, there is a great offensive tackle that is a slam dunk, no doubt about it, pick here at number 4. I just don't know that guy exists. But, if you're talking about building around Drake May, Travis Hunter, especially if you're going to play him primarily at wide receiver, like, certainly makes a ton of sense here. Really would be hard to knock them, especially if they're deploying Hunter at wide receiver. Now, I still wonder, like, if corner is his better position long term, but either way, if you draft Travis Hunter at 4, it's really, really hard to knock it, because you can make an argument at that point that he's the best pure player on the board. I see a lot of Bears fans, especially after the Ben Johnson hire, talking about Ashton Jeanty and maybe coming to grips with the possibility that the Bears draft him at 10, trying to get themselves excited about the Bears drafting him at 10. And, my question is, what makes you think that he will last till 10? It is certainly within the realm of possibility that the Raiders would take him at number 6, which I have happening here, especially with the hiring of Pete Carroll as their head coach. You know how much he loves the running game. Like, not out of the realm of possibilities. And when you talk about the team that took Brock Bowers last year, or in this past draft, and he was a offensive rookie of the year candidate, if these guys go out there and bring in somebody like an Aaron Rodgers and they're trying to win now, like an Ashton Jeanty might do more to help you win now. I can totally see them going that route. But if the Raiders don't at 6, I certainly could see the Saints at number 9, or somebody like the Cowboys at 12 trying to peel up ahead of the Bears. I think the point I'm getting at here is, Bears fans, is don't assume Jeanty is going to be the guy at number 10, not because of the Bears' philosophy or anything else at this point, but more so like he might not make it there. He just might not make it there. In terms of the Bears, though, I think I've had this the past couple of mock drafts, and I'm not moving off of it at least yet. Josh Simmons, the left tackle from Ohio State. Boy. And, as you look at the philosophy of this mock draft, I'm thinking that the Bears are heavily investing in the interior of the offensive line in free agency, maybe add one defensive lineman, whether that's an edge or a tackle, in free agency, which kind of opens up the possibilities of what you do here. And as many Bears fans might sit there and say, well, Braxton Jones is good. Is he really? Like, I think sometimes it's the flaw in the analytics sometimes, and some of these analytical measures that lie to you. Like, they're technically not wrong until you watch the games and you say, in big moments, Braxton is getting his shit rocked a lot in pass protection. Like, is that the guy that you want protecting Caleb's blind side for the next several seasons? I would think the answer is no, especially when you're a year away from having to potentially pay him double-digit millions a year. Is that the guy you want to settle on for the next 5 to 7 years as your left tackle? Like, and if the Bears are smart and aggressive in free agency, it opens up the possibility of you swing for the fences. Yes, Josh Simmons has a knee injury that he's recovering from, but if you think he's a top 5 left tackle in the league, then you fucking take him. And when you think about the offensive philosophy of a Ben Johnson, it was built on Taylor Decker and Penei Sewell as your tackles, right? Like, that's what it was built on. And then the big boys in the middle. So assuming the Bears go big boys in the middle in free agency, you need a superior protector on the left side. And then as you go through, like, into the teens and the 20s, something you may see is, some really notable prospects like Mykel Williams, James Pierce Jr. dropping, and that could certainly happen, right? It's a reflection of how the draft plays out. Depth at certain positions, other teams reaching for need, targeting guys that they don't think will be there later, and the equivalent talent in later rounds just isn't the same. So it is certainly possible. Now, I will tell you where it gets a little interesting for me, and I almost went there with the Bears spending both of their second-round picks on defense. And I know I would have gotten slaughtered for this, and I certainly understand so. I would have been called a bit of a hypocrite for doing so. Here's the reality, though. If the Bears do what they're supposed to do in free agency, and that is a big if, especially under Ryan Poles, but if they do what they're supposed to do, then you're going into this draft with more of a best player available mindset, and you just take the best players on the board. And there certainly is an argument to say, you wonder with the new defensive coordinator, do either of the linebackers really fit, especially Tremaine Edmonds? It's a fair question to ask, right? When you look at the defensive line and you say, okay, maybe you got Montez Sweat on one side, but who's the other guy? You don't really project Austin Booker as being a starter in Dennis Allen's defensive scheme, where like coming like a bat out of hell around the edge isn't the name that protect the edge, that maintain the edge, are strong on the edge. That lends you to think more of like a Landon Jaxson type of guy, big like 6'7", 270, 280-pound dude. So when you look at the round two, I almost went there, but I didn't. And then I'm sure a number of Bears fans are going to say, why the fuck are you taking somebody like Matthew Golden at 39? Yeah, you could say you've got DJ, you've got Rome, you've got Cole Kmet. I wouldn't put tight end out of the mix here for day two either, right? It is about fitting Ben Johnson's philosophy on offense and then also Dennis Allen's philosophy on defense. And for the offense, something that was really lacking, it was really noticeable last year, is who is your speed threat? Who's your explosive kind of field position changing, game changing type of wide receiver? The Bears don't have that. As you mentioned Tyler Scott, I'll laugh in your face at this point. So you can envision Ben Johnson having Jamison Williams in Detroit want somebody that can impact games like that and be a home run type of threat. This might not be a draft Bears fans, what I'm trying to prepare you for. It's not the type of draft necessarily where you just assume that Ryan Poles is going to double or triple down on the offensive line or even double or triple down on the defensive line. It just might not work out that way. And that might be okay because I would run counter to the philosophy we've seen from him over the past 3 years, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. And I would assume at some point in this draft they're going to add to the running back room. Like I've got Shedeur from Arizona State in round 3. Certainly feels like he would be a really good fit. A Jahmyr Gibbs super light, if you will. But man, he sure is a hell of a lot of fun to watch. And he would bring some interesting and exciting elements to that Ben Johnson offense. So if you told me like coming out of this draft, you're getting a top 5 level left tackle, a starting edge, a wide receiver 3 that can take the top off of the defense and be a home run threat, and a running back that can do some dynamic 3-down things, like I would feel pretty good about that draft. But anyways, that's my mock. You can read all of the picks. I just don't have the time to go through all of them and all the teams and all the scenarios and everything else. But I'll probably do another mock draft here in a couple of weeks before the combine starts. So yeah, that's it. No, by the way, the team by team season recaps coming very, very, very soon.